Okay, so activity 3 is all about the veins that are forming the inferior vena cava. We're going to start with the external iliac veins. So here's the external iliac vein, here's the external iliac vein on the left side, and then the internal iliac veins and the external iliac veins. And this little nub here is the internal iliac vein on the right side, internal iliac vein on the left side. Those are both going to drain into the common iliac veins, which are here. Okay, so right common iliac vein, left common iliac vein. And then those are going to drain into the inferior vena cava. Then we have other vessels that drain into the inferior vena cava. What's not shown on this model are the gonadal veins. And the right gonadal vein would drain directly into the inferior vena cava, but the left gonadal vein actually goes into the left renal, drains into the left renal, and then the left renal brings it into the inferior vena cava. And the right renal goes into the inferior vena cava by itself. So the left gonadal connects to the left renal on the left side, but on the right side, the right gonadal and the right renal go in separately. We can actually see that on the torsal model. So this is external iliac vein on the left side. Here is the, I don't know if you can see it, yeah, the internal iliac vein on the right side. Deep in there, left internal iliac vein on the left side. I would show that on the board model because it's just really hard to tag something that deep in there. But then here is the left common iliac vein, right common iliac vein in blue back there. Those would drain into the inferior vena cava. Now I'll show you the gonadals and the weird pathway that I just described. So the right gonadal goes straight into the inferior vena cava. The right renal vein goes straight into the inferior vena cava. But the left gonadal vein, you can see it come up here, actually drains into the left renal, and then the left renal will drain into the inferior vena cava. So that's an asymmetry that we have in our body. The right side is different from the left side. The left side is the gonadal vein goes into the left renal into the inferior vena cava. Okay, so the next part of activity 3 will be on the hepatic portal system. And we actually have a few different models that will show that portal system, the hepatic portal system. So first off, what the hepatic portal system is for, it allows us to filter out the blood that's coming from our intestines and our spleen, because what we absorb from our intestines and the food that we eat could include bacteria, could include viruses, could include toxins, things like that. So we let the liver filter and process that blood first, detoxify if necessary, and then bring that blood back to the inferior vena cava all filtered and clean before we give it back to the heart. So the vessels in that pathway that you're responsible for include, here's the inferior mesenteric vein coming from the large intestine. That is going to drain into the splenic vein here, and then the splenic vein then drains into the hepatic portal vein, which takes that blood to the liver. Then we have the superior mesenteric vein coming from mostly the small intestine, and that's also going to drain into the hepatic portal vein, which takes that blood to the liver for filtering. And then these two here are the hepatic veins that then drain that now filtered blood into the inferior vena cava and then eventually back to the right atrium. So make sure you know that there is a difference between the hepatic portal vein, and know that all of our portal veins are all purple. So portal, purple. So know that our hepatic portal vein, which is in purple here, takes blood to the liver, while the hepatic veins here in blue take that now filtered blood to the inferior vena cava and eventually back to the heart. Okay, that is one model that shows that pathway. Next is these two individual organ models. So what we're seeing here is the back side of the pancreas, back side of the first part of the small intestine, which is the duodenum, and the back side or posterior side of the spleen. So the posterior aspect of all these organs. So number 7 here, This is that superior mesenteric vein coming from the small intestine that's draining into the hepatic portal vein. This is the inferior mesenteric vein coming from the large intestine, yes. That is going to drain into the splenic vein here, which is then going to drain into the hepatic portal vein. So superior mesenteric vein into the hepatic portal vein, and then the inferior mesenteric vein into the splenic vein, which drains into the hepatic portal vein. That hepatic portal vein, which you can also see right here on this model, that takes the blood to the liver for detoxification. Once that blood has been filtered, then it's going to return to the inferior vena cava through the hepatic veins, which you can see at number 15 would be considered the hepatic veins. And then if we look at the top of this model, I guess I'll sit on my tippy toes. These here and here, those would be considered hepatic veins, then draining into this, which is the inferior vena cava, and then back to the heart. The last model that shows this portal system is our torso model. And this looks very similar to the model I just showed you with the individual organ. So superior mesenteric vein to the hepatic portal vein, inferior mesenteric vein to the splenic vein, and then to the hepatic portal vein. One thing I forgot to mention in the arteries video on this model is that we can see the superior and inferior mesenteric arteries and veins from the front aspect of the mesenteries here. So these would be the superior mesenteric vein, superior mesenteric artery, inferior mesenteric vein, inferior mesenteric artery. And so you can tell here, this right here, this superior mesenteric vein is right in between the pancreas and the duodenum, which it is right here as well. In between the pancreas and the duodenum is that first one here. So on the patient's right side is the superior, on the patient's left side is the inferior. If we look at the front, yes, this would be still the patient's right side is superior. The patient's left side is the inferior. And so those veins I just described, splenic to the hepatic portal vein, superior mesenteric vein to the hepatic portal vein, would take that blood to the liver. And you can see that on this model as well. So this actually would all be tugged all in here, which is hard to see without pulling them out. But that is the hepatic portal vein there, which then would take the blood to the liver for filtering, for detoxifying, and cleaning before we return to the inferior vena cava here. Now this model doesn't show the hepatic veins, it only shows the inferior vena cava. You can see the hepatic veins on both the board model, and I'll show you really quickly again. Hepatic veins here on the board model, and then hepatic veins here on the standalone liver model. And that is all the models that we can see the hepatic portal system on.